with Marines and Paras now advancing across the north part of East Falkland. Julian Thompson and his team still favoured a swift strike on the capital. But the arrival of Jeremy Moore and Tony Wilson's 5 Brigade at San Carlos put a stop to that.
I was about to give orders for our attack when I was told about the move round to the south, and I stopped it.
Moore proposed a new plan, moving 5 Brigade along a separate southern route, a so-called Great Leap Forward, allowing them to catch up with the Marines and Paras. Now scant resources would have to be shared between 2 brigades.
I didn't for the life of me think that I would have to look after the logistics of 5 Brigade as well. I had to divide my very slim resources twice as much as before. And I did get over and see the commander of 5 Brigade to try and bend his ear a bit, and I came away empty-handed. I think that's probably as far as I dare go.
We'll tell you everything that we know at this time. I'll also tell you what I intend to find out, as soon as I may find it out, and how I intend to find it out. And at the end of the day, well, then you'll be right up to speed, totally in my mind, and you'll know exactly what's going on.
Tony Wilson said the intelligence is going to be so good that you'll know the name of the man in the trench opposite. And we all thought, yeah. The only real intelligence we got was off the BBC World Service.
And that bloody idiot Wilson took it upon himself to mobilise his brigade and start moving along the south. Crazy thing to do.
I've long had my eye on moving as far forward as I could get, so that I could get myself poised for whatever comes in what you might call the final phase. And certainly, Fitzroy and Bluff Cove were 2 places that we particularly wanted.
I perceived that Tony was engaged in some sort of race with 3 Commander Brigade to get his chaps there first. The thing about military setups is everyone thinks about their own side. You know, even people on your own side who aren't part of you are the enemy.
Brigadier Wilson wanted 5 Brigade to move quickly, but there was little transport available. His first proposal met resistance.
Well, John Crossland was one of my favourite officers. I love John Crossland dearly because he's a sort of complete rebel. Tony Wilson wandered in and said, "I want you to walk to Fitzroy." And John looked up and said, "Brigadier, are you pissed?"
Well, one of the principles of war is concentrate your force. And we were spreading ours out. And it's like not having enough Marmite to put in your bread and butter in the morning. If you start putting Marmite on the wrong things, you'll end up with nothing worth eating.
The idea that we should attack from coast to coast with inadequate combat and logistic resources, and most of all, an inability to communicate from the headquarters round to the southern flank. I was shocked when I heard, and I even tried to argue with General Jeremy Moore, who wasn't in the listening mode. And it was the first time I felt, during the entire war, that we might actually lose this war.
It was a very silly thing to do, in my opinion, because to start with, the only way down there to take supplies and people was by sea. And it's a 17-hour trip round. So you can't do it in darkness.
As 3 Commando Brigade consolidated its positions around Mount Kent, 5 Brigade began their Great Leap Forward. Most of the troops would need to be moved by ship. But without the knowledge of other commanders in the field, Brigadier Wilson decided to fly to Para to secure Fitzroy by commandeering the last remaining Chinook helicopter.
We shoved as many soldiers as we could into that Chinook, and we kept cramming them in, and when they didn't fit any longer, we literally booted them into the helicopter and got them in.
My brigade recce troop are on some high ground overlooking Fitzroy, about 10 miles away. And they saw a Chinook landing at Fitzroy.
We assumed, because the Argentines had Chinooks, that it must be some kind of raid. And so we started to call down an artillery strike on the helicopter.
And the guns were being heaved round from pointing that way to pointing that way.
The senior gunner realised that it actually might be our own, so that at the last minute the strike was called off.
So we nearly lured a Farmation regiment onto our own side because we weren't kept in the picture as to what the hell was going on.
But 5 Brigade's troubles were only just beginning. By the evening of the 7th of June, the final shipment of Welsh Guards was being moved to catch up with the rest of 5 Brigade. The only way to ferry them round to the southern forward bases was by ship from San Carlos. This meant a 17-hour journey on the unprotected vessel, the Sir Galahad.
We were given a clear set of plans. We would be taken around under cover of darkness and offloaded into Bluff Cove. Things slightly altered. The medical corps was put on board the Galahad to go round to come off at Fitzroy. This delayed our sailing, as a result of which there was not the possibility of offloading us in or around Bluff Cove under cover of darkness.
By daybreak, Sir Galahad and another supply ship, Sir Tristram, were off Fitzroy, still short of Bluff Cove. 250 Welsh Guards on board the Galahad waited whilst ammunition, a medical team and an anti-aircraft unit were unloaded.
I remember seeing what I thought was meant to be escorted with some frigate or some ship or something, which weren't there. That was a bit worrying.
We were quite shocked that the ships were out there in the open, somewhere where none of us expected the campaign to have gone, to tell you the truth. In plain sight of an Argentinian observation position, and also during daylight.
My concern is, why was it taking so long unloading? I spoke to the commanding officer. I tried to urge him to get off. They were sitting ducks and totally open to Argentinian air attack.
He advised us to get off as soon as we could, which my immediate boss understood, wanted to clarify orders, but at the end of the day, we wanted to get ashore as soon as we could.
The Skyhawks came in to attack and were out again with our gunfire chasing them too late.
There's a massive explosion. The whole ship rocked and everything went sort of instantly black.
There were a load of lads burst through the door and they just shouted, "The ship's been hit."
We knew nothing until we saw the black smoke billowing out of the landing ship, Sir Galahad.
I was physically lifted up and blown probably about 8 feet backwards. You breathe in, and you're breathing in this toxic mess. And you shout out to everybody else, get down on the floor. In that moment, you were so vulnerable. You just felt like a child that's been completely immersed in some appalling experience.
We were now on our hands and knees. We couldn't go back because we had guards coming in behind us. We couldn't go any further. It was just absolute pandemonium. I remember turning around and saying, "We're done for. This is us."
There was a couple of lads with their heads on fire. Anyone that was in there wasn't surviving. It was just rounds coming at us, bombs. Yeah. We'd look to see if there's any more casualties, but I think anyone in there was gone. Just horrific, really. I've never seen anything like that before, and probably never seen anything like that afterwards. Sorry.
Every boat and landing craft went out to help. The unanswered question was why hadn't they been used 5 hours earlier to get the men off as soon as they'd arrived?
There have been some incredibly heroic acts carried out by a number of guardsmen in the way in which they went back into this blazing inferno to try and help pull people out. The way in which they came together to get themselves off that boat was outstanding. I think it needs to be recognized.
I mean, what were we doing? Tracking a thin red line coast to coast? I mean, how did it happen? Had we rolled the attack on the 30th of May, when Julian Thompson felt he was able to do it, then of course we'd have probably won the war in the next 2 or 3 days, and we would have never had to suffer the awful losses that we did incur by opening up a southern flank. This great leap forward was completely unnecessary and sadly cost 200 casualties from the attack on the Sir Galahad.
I was fortunate enough to be the captain of the Welsh Guards rugby team. Unfortunately, on the Galahad, we lost 2 really prominent members of that side, 2 outstanding members of that side, in Cliff Ellie and Andy Walker. There hasn't been a day since the 8th of June, 1982, that I have not remembered them in some way.
"32 Welsh Guardsmen lost their lives, along with 11 other servicemen, and 5 crew members. 150 were wounded. Despite the setback of Fitzroy, the war still had to be won. The advance on Port Stanley was blocked by a ring of mountain-top defenses, and time was running out.
Admiral Woodward said that he was unable to sustain the carrier force at sea beyond mid-June. So in Wellington's words, it was really a very close run thing.